All right, welcome everyone. Very excited to have you today for today's edition of the Antibiotic Reduction Expert Series. My name is Ryan Hines. I'm the Communications Manager at Biomin, and I'm very excited to talk to you today about supporting poultry gut health with essential oils in drinking water. Now, in order to explore this subject in depth, I'm joined by two expert speakers from Biomin. I'm very glad to welcome both of them today. They are both returning speakers. This will be the second time they've each participated in this antibiotic reduction expert series. So we're very glad to see them for a second time. I'm going to start with a hello to Matthias Zaunschirm. Hi, Matthias.
Hello.
Welcome. Would you briefly introduce yourself for our audience?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. My name is Matthias Zaunschirm. I'm product manager for phytogenics product line called Digesterone. I'm working for Biomin almost 3 years now. My background is in nutritional sciences and physiological chemistry. Looking forward to the webinar.
Absolutely. Thank you, Matthias. And our second expert today is Dr. Fernando Lima. Hi, Fernando.
Hi, Ryan. Good morning, everybody.
Great to have you. We're talking about poultry gut health. You're a vet. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I started my work 30 years ago, mainly on the road. I've been working on different levels, from feed mule in nutrition, breeders, layers, turkeys, broilers, and other exotic bird species. So let's say more or less that for 30 years I've been mainly on the road rather than the office. I joined Biomin 7 years ago, support customers mainly in Europe. I'm from origin Portuguese, although I'm based in Switzerland in the moment. I'm very glad to join the team today for the nice discussion.
Excellent, great. Glad to have you join us as well. All right, Fernando and Matthias, before we get started, I want to speak directly to our live audience who's listening and remind everyone that this is an interactive session, right? So that means two things. That means, first of all, you can use this platform, and in the chat function, you can enter your questions for either Matthias or Fernando, and we'll try to get to as many of those as we can during the session or at the end, where we have reserved time specifically for questions and answer session. All right. That also means that we're going to be able to ask you a couple of questions throughout today's hour that we're together, and then we'll be able to open the discussion, explore these topics a bit more with your input as well. So also look for those audience poll questions when we get to them. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and get started with our main topic today. We're in the essential oils, phytogenics. Matthias has introduced himself. He's going to give us a brief overview of what we're talking about exactly when we mean essential oils and phytogenics. Please, Matthias.
Thanks, Ryan, for the introduction. So let's jump directly to the topic. Today we are talking about essential oils in drinking water. So to which category belong essential oils in the feed additive spectrum? They belong to the phytogenic feed additives. And as you can see here, phytogenic feed additives, they belong in 3 different categories. Phytogenic feed additives can be herbs and spices, like full herbs and spices, for example, oregano or black pepper or chili, for example. Then there are essential oils. They contain a lot of active compounds. Essential oils are mainly gained via steam distillation of herbs. This is our topic today. And then as well, there are non-volatile extracts, for example, gained from oak bark or licorice or grapeseed. So they contain mostly non-volatile extracts. And these all belong to functional feed additives, so called phytogenic feed additives. So today we're focusing on essential oils in drinking water. And I think, Ryan, we are now having a poll question for this.
Absolutely. So thank you for that introduction to the topic. Let's check with our audience to see how familiar they are with this category of feed additives. So we're going to go ahead and launch our first poll. Please go ahead and choose the one best answer that fits your situation. How do you use phytogenic feed additives? So in your operation, or whether you're using them in your operation or recommending them on commercial farms, do you do so primarily in feed, in water, both in feed and in water, or you don't have really an experience with phytogenic feed additives. We're going to ask you to please, oh, everyone's been quite quick to jump in with our input already. We have already half of our live audience has voted so far. The results are coming in, and in just another moment, after everyone who's like to participate has had their chance, we're going to close the poll, and then we're going to go ahead and look at the results and get a feel for everyone's familiarity with the topic. So thank you. With 2/3 of the votes in, we're going to go ahead and close. And Matthias, I'm going to put these up and read out the results to see where we stand.
Thanks.
How does our audience use phytogenic feed additives? We have 35% in feed, followed by 34% in feed and water. 15% are using the drinking water applications, and 15% are not using phytogenic feed additives. So a pretty interesting result, but it largely suggests a high degree of familiarity with the topic today. Matthias, how does that correspond with what you're seeing out in the industry in your discussions with customers?
Yeah, thank you very much. So this is exactly what we can see as well on the field at customer level. So it is known that essential oils in drinking water, they gain more and more popularity. So of course, in feed, use of essential oils or phytogenic feed additives is the most common way, but customers already use a combined solution with in feed and in water application, and it's more and more common practice that they use essential oils in water. But why is it such a benefit to use essential oils in drinking water?
So Matthias, right before we get in, let me interrupt you for just a moment. It seems as though when I've launched the poll, I've changed the screen rights. So if you could go ahead and show us your screen again so that we get back to those slides, I think that will help the audience to follow these messages that you're ready to deliver.
Okay, so you cannot see my screen right now?
Not yet. Now we have your presentations up, and we're exactly at the point you were about to make. Yeah, we see slide 5. So if you'd go ahead and put that into presentation mode, and we're going to hear more from you about the reasons for applying essential oils in drinking water.
Okay, perfect.
If you could just switch the display settings to presentation mode, everyone will have a nice, clean, big picture to see. Oh, there we go. And perfect. Please continue. Sorry for interrupting.
Perfect. Sorry for this short interruption. So again, so why is it so important to use essential oils in drinking water? And as I mentioned before, more and more customers can see the benefit in using them in water. So first of all, if the birds are sick and they don't feel well, they are under challenge. So first they reduce the feed intake. So they reduce it substantially. Sometimes they don't even eat at all. So that's why sick birds reduce feed intake, but they're still drinking. So that's why it's very important that essential oils can be applied via drinking water to directly can be effective in the animal when the animal is sick, not having the feed intake as wished, but still acting in the animal. So a second point is the immediate availability of the essential oils. So if you can see that the birds are under challenge, or you know already that the birds will be under challenge in a couple of days, the essential oils in drinking water can be used right away. So you can use them, put them into the water, and you can observe basically their efficacy afterwards. So it's also very important, and a very great benefit of using essential oils in drinking water is the flexibility in the dosing, in the dosage. So according to the challenge, you can dose the essential oil application accordingly, having a lower dose or a higher dose. So moreover, you can really be very flexible in the duration of applying essential oils in drinking water. Having it basically the whole cycle of a broiler, or only as a control during challenging times. And you will see that because it's in the water, you will see a very fast response due to its fast digestion, and it can be active in the animal very fast. And of course, very obviously, when it's not possible to apply feed additives via feed, it's possible to use them in the water. So let's talk about our solution, Digesterone Pepsol. It's a solution, it's a liquid solution to support the animals during challenges. On the one hand, environmental challenge or pathogenic challenge, to ensure stable animal performance while mitigating economical losses. So what are the challenges which can be addressed by Digesterone Pepsol? It's on the one hand, low feed intake. On the other hand, enteric challenges, pathogenic pressures like Clostridium challenges or Streptococcus challenges, of course, high mortality. And you will see that Digesterone Pepsol will act very fast and effectively. So, but how is the mode of action of Digesterone Pepsol? So you can see here 4 pillars, which are basically the underlying mode of action of Digesterone Pepsol. As mentioned before, feed intake is very important, and because of the synergistic essential oils of this and the selected ingredients of Digesterone Pepsol, it has an appetite stimulating effect. You can see here that, for example, in layers, heat stress is impacting different performance parameters of layers. Egg production, FCR, weight, eggshell thickness, egg production itself. And this is all attributed because of reduced feed intake under challenging times. Then Digesterone Pepsol leads to reduced inflammatory processes. So I'm pretty sure you've heard about oxidative stress and inflammation. These are very, very important key points and key parameters in animal performance. So it is known that environmental stimuli like stress or even feed intake, they can cause oxidative stress. This oxidative stress leads to activation of the NF-kappa B, which is known to be the master regulator of inflammatory processes in the animal, triggering inflammation, and inflammation itself leads to the release of cytokines like tumor necrosis factor alpha, interleukins, and again reactive oxygen species called ROS. This reactive oxygen species again induce oxidative stress. So you can see stress and inflammation, it's linked to each other. It's a vicious cycle. That's why it's very important that Digesterone helps and can operate on different steps, reducing the impact of oxidative stress and inflammation. And why is it so important? Because the animal needs energy to cope with these stress and inflammatory effects. And it is known that the animal can use up to 6% of the energy to cope with these stress and inflammation factors. And this energy is lost for performance, of course, of the animals. So that's how performance is compromised. So just to show you very shortly the mode of action of inflammatory responses, you can see that here you can see a cell with the cell layer, and stressors like lipopolysaccharides or other toxins are activating toll-like receptors in the cell membrane, and these toll-like receptors are activating the before mentioned NF-kappa B, the transcription factor. And this NF-kappa B leads to inflammatory responses, as you can see here. And how to control this and how to reduce inflammatory processes. Here you can see active compounds of plants like cavacrol, cinnamaldehyde, or thymol, especially of essential oils. They are known to inhibit or reduce the effects of toll-like receptors, leading to reduced inflammation. And this was also seen in a peer-reviewed paper. And the research was done in-house at the Bioman Research Center, that oregano was reducing the activation of NF-kappa B. So this master regulator of inflammation, so reducing inflammatory processes. So also microbiota modulation and modulation of gut structure is very important for maintaining performance in the animal. And it can be shown, so in this scientific trial, so birds have been challenged with Clostridium perfringens in the control group, and in the essential oil group, they were also challenged with Clostridium perfringens, and they got a mix of carbapenem and thymol basically. And you can see here that in the group of the essential oil treatment, the group of the microbiota of the firmicutes was significantly improved and increased compared to the firmicutes in a control group. And part of these firmicutes are lactobacilli. Lactobacilli are known to play a key role when it comes to gut development and improving gut functionality. And as well as you can see here, the modulation of the microbiome in the ileum, you can also see the beneficial effects on mortality. So reduced mortality in the treatment group with the essential oils, and also reduced lesion scores when essential oils have been applied to the animals. It's not shown here, but also tight junction and basically the gut structure was improved in the essential oil group. And it is also known that Digesterone Pepsol has a direct antibacterial effect. It's also very important when it comes to control and support the animal under pathogenic challenges. And we did an in-house experiment where combination of the oils used for Digesterone Pepsol have been investigated on the growth of two different Clostridium perfringens strains. So after incubation of the strains for 24 hours, each hour basically, the growth of the Clostridium perfringens was monitored and checked. And you can see that already at a very low concentration, Digesterone Pepsol, so at the concentration of 0.02%, Digesterone Pepsol could basically reduce the growth of both strains of Clostridium perfringens. So it's a very strong, it shows very strong antimicrobial activity against Clostridium perfringens. So this was an introduction to Digesterone Pepsol, the liquid solution to support animals, especially during challenges, to control environmental and pathogenic challenges, to ensure stable animal performance, and also to ensure the economic, to mitigate the economic losses which can occur or mostly occur under this challenging period. Stimulating appetite, reducing inflammatory processes, showed very strong reduced pathogenic pressures, showing antibacterial activity. And of course, if there is improved gut functionality and gut health, also the nutrient availability is also improved. And it's leading to substantial benefits in broilers and layers. So we see that Digesterone Pepsol application improves egg production, this FCR, of course, reduces disease incidences, and also, if you have less disease incidences, you need less intervention and reduce medical treatment. So these are the measurable benefits of Digesterone Pepsol. And to show you here that there are lots of different stressors on farm level impacting animals. For example, you have social stress, environmental stress, management stress, and also bacterial challenges, different pathologies, which are impacting the animal's performance. And here I will hand over to my colleague Fernando, who will explain practical experiences using Digesterone Pepsol on the field.
All right, thank you for that, Matthias. Let's turn over to Fernando now.
Yeah.
The
Screen.
screen will be headed your way. Perfect. So now we see that you just bring up your portion of the slides. We had a question just a moment ago about whether the slides will be distributed. Yes, we're recording today's session. The recording will be available, and the slide deck will also be available for you to consult.
Okay, can you see now?
We see the PowerPoint slides. Yeah, if you want to go ahead and put those in presentation mode.
Yeah.
We've had a few questions in. Yeah.
On the right corner, Fernando. Yeah.
It's okay now? It's filling the
Perfect.
whole.
Yep.
Okay.
We're ready.
You were making a question, Ryan, or shall I move on?
No, please go ahead. We'll get to them in the Q&A session.
Okay.
But please carry on. Everyone, please continue with asking those questions. We'll get to as many as we can at the bottom of the hour.
All right. Okay. So good morning again. Let's talk about the practical experience with Digesterone Pepsol. We know the mode of action. Let's understand how to manage this application and when it will be really practical and useful. So I remember I had to remind this slide. It's quite crucial to understand that essential oils in drinking water are, let's say, a very good practical tool for sick birds who still drink and don't eat. Whenever there's an issue or an outbreak, a sudden outbreak, it's important to have something that we can use immediately or for control groups. So I don't want to repeat. I need to emphasize this opportunity. With that, we must remember that the chicken's digestive tract is a short tract, and it develops immensely from day 0 up to 7 days. It increases the size by 600%. So there's a huge development which can be, let's say, disturbed by several different factors like feed, for example. And what are the main causes for this poor chicken GIT, gastrointestinal tract development, at very young birds? A lot of causes are possible. We start from imbalanced diets and harmful feed components. When we talk about harmful feed components, we talk about anti-nutritional factors, mycotoxins, fiber quality, raw material quality, because sometimes there are different raw materials from different sources, which can really harm the fragile gut epithelium, especially on the first age when they are developing. And balanced amino acid ratio. The particle size is also important, not just for the feed structure, but also for the shape and the fiber quality, as I mentioned. The environment challenges, they are all important, and heat and cold stress can really disturb a single flock or a young flock for the whole cycle. And the ventilation, the amount of CO2 and ammonia and dust in the air can really disturb the animals and compromise gut digestibility and the gut microbiota. And the light management stress the animals as well. And by stressing the animals, it will stress the normal, regular, natural peristaltism. And of course, the birth density on the floor. Stocking density is always an issue to compromise for the amount of pathogens existing in the environment. And last but not least, all pathogenic microorganisms that roam around the animal's production, like bacteria, viruses, or protozoa. Talking about fibers, it's important to understand that different sources of fibers are also different on shapes. If you compare here, for example, oat hulls and sunflower hulls, these shapes is completely different, and this form and structure and physical-chemical characteristics might change and disturb the normal gut epithelia structure and leading to inflammation. So let's say the dietary fiber affects the gastrointestinal tract development in different ways, depending not only on the type of the fiber, which is also important, but also on its particle size. Both are important. Let's almost conclude that cellulose inclusion has the least effect on the intestine because of its lack of physical structure. Here I have some pictures to share with you from my practice. On the top left, you see in the normal feces versus a wet amount of feces, we're showing some foam, so it could be already a digestible disturbance. Mainly, of course, most of the time, the Clostridia is prevalent. It's worldwide most prevalent pathology or disturbance. At the bottom left, you have a more wetted diarrhea, more wetted dropping. It doesn't mean, when we look at diarrhea, it doesn't mean it's already an infection. Could start from a disturbance of the normal gut epithelial structure. But it comes a moment, if this keeps on for a long time, it will lead to damage in enterocyte structure, eventually producing some damage that will lead to hemorrhages. So there's in the picture at the center, you see a lot of undigested feed, some bloody. I don't mean this is not really raw blood, but it's already a bloody epithelium that is being delivered to the environment. If you see the picture on top, it should correspond between the middle of this big picture to the right. So on the left, there's a starting point with some villi disturbance, and if you move on to the right, you see already some inflammation, some irritation, and this is linked with erosion. If for some reason Clostridia takes a chance because so many dead cells will release to the lumen, what will happen is that we will feed existing Clostridia, which should be reduced in number, but sometimes if there's too much damage in the gut epithelia, this enterocyte will release their content, and this plasma leakage will feed Clostridia, and they will abundant. More abundant Clostridia will lead to severe damage, and with that, much less absorption. Sometimes it comes like this, it's a blacky diarrhea, because they are not absorbing anymore the protein source. And of course, the last stage could be a really clinical coccidiosis, because sometimes, or more often in these days, subclinical coccidiosis linked with Clostridia, but sometimes even clinical coccidiosis might arise. So most of the times we are concerned with wet litter. Wet litter means could be the environment, as I mentioned, could be the water intake, could be stocking density because it's concentrating too much feces on a square meter, but also with digestibility. Less digestibility, more viscosity leads to a less water absorption, and with that, the litter tends to be more wet. So I'll pretend here to show you one trial with broilers by using Digesterone Pepsol. In this situation, these birds were facing Clostridia, so we are talking about 74 mixed sex non-vaccinated Ross 308 broilers, which were kept in cages to prevent contact between birds. And we have three groups: negative group, a control group, because they were challenged with Clostridia, and a positive group with Digesterone Pepsol used between 15 and 24 days with this dosage, 60 ml per 1,000 liters. So what happened? If you take a look at this drawing, you will understand that the main trial design composed about a vaccine applied around 16 days. Birds were challenged by oral inoculation with Clostridia perfringens from day 17 up to day 20, 3 times a day, 4 times 10 to power to 8 colonies. And at day 18, they were even more challenged with 10 times the normal dose for paracox to stimulate, to stress the gut Clostridia colonization. And samples were taken on day 22, 23, 24, and to determine the gross lesions of the intestine. So gross lesions are mainly here associated with enteritis, which was examined in the duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. Lesion scores were recorded depending on the severity, from 0, no gross lesions, up to 6 with diffuse necrosis, typical of cases. In the middle, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, depending on the number of focal necrosis that were found, from 1 to 5, 5 to 16, or more than 16, or even patches of necrosis. But only lesion scores above 2 were classified as really typical necrotic enteritis positive outbreaks. Let's see the results. So if you see the negative control group, okay, there was no lesions and on any birds that were euthanized, 0 out of 5, 0 out of 6, so in total 0 out of 16. On the control, on positive controls, so those which were inoculated with Clostridia and challenged with 10 times vaccine, they had 3 out of 9, 9 out of 10, so in total 17 out of 29. while the Digesterone Pepsol group, applied from 15 to 24 days old, could manage Clostridia growth, and this is why we have 3 out of 10, 4 out of 9, 1 out of 10. It's a really incredible reduction, because we went from 17 out of 29 to 8 out of 29. It's more than 60% reduction. I would say so in summary, that's no challenge, no lesions. With Clostridia, more than 59% were affected. By adding essential oils, you had just 28% of prevalence, considering lesion scores above 2. So what are the conclusions of this trial? Digesterone Pepsol applied in drinking water reduced necrotic lesions associated with Clostridia. It's not because digesterone was killing Clostridia, but it was, let's say, managing and controlling the lesion, or all the disturbance produced in the gut epithelia, and with that, less plasma leakage was released to the lumen to feed Clostridia. So Digesterone Pepsol represents an alternative management tool with potential to promote intestinal health in these conditions. Let's move to another trial, but this time with layers. It was held in Italy, 2013. And basically, these layers were facing some Clostridia perfringens issues. It's not so common long time ago, but in these days, I've been facing some problems with Clostridia on layings already in production, and sometimes even coccidiosis when they are transferred from pullet house to layer house. So this is an issue. There's not many medications to use, and this farm they're using a bit of Thailand, so tyrosine, to control. Anyhow, we tried to use Pepsol from 56 up to 60 weeks of age for 25 days. And at the bottom, you see that you have a basal diet, and the basal diet plus Digesterone Pepsol, taken from weeks 56 up to 60, starting with a higher dosage of 60 ml per 1,000 liters for 6 days, ending up for the rest of the period with 30 ml per 1,000 liters of water. So what's the outcome? Considering the total mortality in this blue bar, you see that part of this mortality was due to Clostridia, and on green, it should be the Lohmann standard. Since Digesterone Pepsol was applied on 56 weeks, you notice there will be a reduction of the total mortality progressively from 56 up to 59, 60 weeks. And more important than reducing the total mortality due to clostridiosis, the red bar tend to disappear. So by the time we can conclude that Clostridia was managed and reduced by applying this phytogenic in drinking water. And it turns to be that the total normal house mortality came closer to the Lohmann standard. So this is another summary. What was increased in laying percentage? The blue bar represents the green bar represents the standard performance, while the green line represents the Lohmann standard. By starting to apply digester, we could compensate and recover part of the production and get closer to the Lohmann standard. You see this in picture. So we started 56 weeks, and up to 59, 58, 59, we recover part of the normal standard. So conclusion: the dietary supplementation with Digesterone Pepsol reduced mortality due to clostridiosis, increased egg production consequently, and of course net benefit, and it has an effective replacement on antibiotic application. So how to use Digesterone Pepsol in drinking water? For broilers, including ducks, geese, and turkeys, so meat birds. For the starting, I would say that for when gut development and Clostridia challenge is still under development, and there is possible house transfer for turkeys, 30 ml per 1,000 liters from day 0 to 7 and 18 to 23, to avoid any disturbance on the normal gut epithelial development, and at the same time to stimulate villi development. Because once we protect the gut with phytogenics, Consequently, villi won't be so much stressed, there is less erosion over the gut epithelia, and with that, the villi will grow a bit longer. So in general, should be 12% higher. So it means by the end that we can increase the sortative surface. For wet litter, whenever it comes, 30 to 60 ml depending on the severity. I would say 3-5 days minimum for wet litter. For necrotic enteritis challenges, it depends if it's really on top, already existing clostridiosis, or if there is a periodical situation, we can get a nice control and compromise by applying it before, 3-4 days before. So I would say in general, from 18 to 26 days old, if you use 100 ml, usually we control clostridiosis outbreaks. After removal of the coccidiostats, when people take the birds, or especially broilers, up to the end with a clean feed without anticoccidial, so to avoid any possible future cocci outbreak, 30 ml per 1,000 liters, to stimulate feed intake, which is very important because sometimes the feed could eventually represent an aggressive factor leading to mild enteritis or other intestinal challenges. With that, 30 ml per 1,000 liters for 5 days throughout the growing cycle. Whenever a feed application is not possible, again, 30 ml per 1,000 liters. What's the scenario for layers in breeders? Wet droppings. It's important, especially on layers, using 30-60 ml per 1,000 liters for 1 up to 3 weeks, depending on how long it takes. Pullets at the beginning, again, to stimulate gut epithelial development from day 0 to 10, 30 to up to 60 ml per 1,000 liters. For heat stress, because most of the times heat stress disturbs the normal hormonal cycle in the bird and leading to neurotransmitters which will disturb the peristaltism. So this is a consequence of heat stress, and if it disturbs peristaltism, it will disturb digestibility. So let's use it as a digestibility enhancer for integrity by 460 ml per 1,000 liters for 6 days, every 4 weeks in laying phase. It might eventually increase egg size by improving digestibility and amino acid absorption. For gut maintenance and egg quality, once every 4 weeks for 7-8 days, same dosage, 60 ml, and especially for floor and free-range birds, which are much more active and sensible to stress, eventually intestinal stress as well. For pullet transfer, as I mentioned, coccidiosis sometimes happen, and with that we use 100 ml per 1,000 liters for 5 up to 7 days to control it. With that, I end my session. I'm open for discussions and any remarks that might arise.
Great, thank you for that, Fernando. You certainly sparked a number of questions that we've seen coming in, so I actually want to start in with those, particularly as they relate to the timing and application and how and when to use these tools. I mean, what you've summed up there, I think that the term that you used was quite important, that these are alternative tools. They do not work like antibiotics. They're in a very different category, right? They're preventive. They're made to avoid later complications in the future. But we had a question here about timing, and I think you've already answered it, but it's worth emphasizing, right? Is it best to just sort of schedule these in a certain period in the production phase or cycle, or are you going to be looking for certain signs on the farm that there are particular challenges, and which signs are you looking for, right? How do you actually know when to use these tools?
Can I answer, Matthias?
Yeah, please go ahead, Fernando.
Okay, there are 2 options. One is, let's say, occasional situation that might arise. Okay, then you use it with a higher dosage for a longer period, 7-10 days, because it just happened. And you have no solution, no tool to use, and even no chance to use antibiotics with the disadvantages by using antibiotics. On the other hand, periodically you find an issue. When you transfer pullets, you find coccidiosis. When you have broilers and they move, for example, from phase 2 to phase 3, usually you find some clostridiosis signs or eventually clinical clostridiosis. Then this is a common periodical issue you should prevent. So you have to go on two situations. Both are possible to manage with phytogenics. One is on top, another, as I mentioned, periodically you have this issue, you have to prevent yourself 3, 4, 5 days before. Why? Because this is a natural solution. So it's not like using an antibiotic to kill a specific bacteria. You have to prepare the gut for the, let's call it, the arrival, for the opportunity that will happen very soon.
That's great. Thank you for clarifying that. I think some of the guidance that you provided there, particularly on specific instances where you'd want to use it, the duration of the intervention, the quantities is also very helpful, and I believe has also answered another part of that question about how long, at which stage, how many days, what amount, has also covered there. So that's available here. It'll be available in the slides and in the recording for everyone who wants to read that again. And of course, custom advice for your situation is available from experts like Fernando and the rest of the BioMin team.
Of course, it's important to do the diagnosis. Sometimes we have to understand what's the origin, what's the cause, and could be multifactorial. Anyhow, this is a nice tool to use without compromising any withdrawal period or any drug concerns.
Absolutely. And Matthias, this is the second time, I mentioned both of you have joined us twice now. This is the second time we're talking about phytogenics in poultry. But here, today's focus is specifically on drinking water. So I'd like to tackle a couple of questions that focus directly on the drinking water application. And I think the most important one is interesting because we have a couple of questions on this, on the effect of the drinking water application itself, right? You mentioned there's a feed intake increase that we heard about from using phytogenics. Is there, and we have two questions going the opposite directions. Does this increase drinking water intake or does it decrease drinking water intake when you add a product like this into the water?
Do you want to answer because you're experienced from the fields?
If there is already wet litter, for example, wet droppings, a huge amount of inflammation, a nice percentage, I mean nice clinically of inflammation, there's a lot of water lost. So I would say that it won't change water intake. It will make it that water will be better absorbed. This is a different point. On the other hand, if the birds tend to refuse to eat because they don't like the structure, the particle size, homogeneity, feed homogeneity, of course, by improving feed intake, they will control and increase water intake. Because whenever they start to refuse the feed, they will drink less. I don't mean 100% of the time, but 90% it works like that. So by improving feed intake, you improve water intake, because it should be the opposite. It's usually the water intake that dictates what they eat, but it's depending also on water taste, on feed taste. Although the birds are not those animals so much sensible for taste, like pigs, for example, but they are quite sensible, especially for the physical structure. Is it clear?
I think that's absolutely clear. Yeah, thank you for that. Let's talk about a very practical point here. When you're adding this product, perhaps you haven't used phytogenics in drinking water application before. Is there any negative impact on the equipment, on the pipes? Do you see any kind of clogging or film formation? Any additional maintenance, hygiene, cleaning measures you need to take in order to keep everything clean and running smoothly?
Before Matthias gives his expert reply, I will just make a comment. It's crucial, whatever you use in drinking water, whether it's the phytogenic, an acidifier, an antibiotic, to clean properly the pipeline before the animals are set. Because there's a huge amount of biofilm, doesn't matter what the water pH is, there's always dust in the air, so there's always a biofilm that could compromise the nipple and the drinker's flux. So it's crucial they use hydrogen peroxide as acids when sanitary break is up to clean properly, and not just the pipeline, but flush the nipples. Then you can use essential oils, because I've been using this for a long time, more than 10 years, and it's working. As far you do it. Please, Matthias, any comment from your side?
Thank you, Fernando, for this input. Yeah, farm management is crucial in this regards. Otherwise, you won't see the effect of the phytogenic feed additives, so of the essential oils, because when the nipples are clogged and the pipes are dirty, you might see a little bit improvement, but not the full potential of the essential oils. So this is crucial. The farm management, but additional to that, also, of course, it comes to the formulation of the essential oils itself, of the product. So it needs to be formulated in a proper way that it can be used in water, of course. So there might also be some quality differences in the product.
Right, and just to highlight, because we had one additional question come in here relating to this. Is there any certain special care that you need to take with the water tubes, with the drinking lines, after you use them?
Never. From my practice, I've never did that, and it worked. We are doing, for example, periodically for layers. It's a long cycle from 16, 70 weeks up to 80 or 85 or even 90 weeks. Some customers do it every 4 weeks for 1 week to prevent the gut erosion and wear, because it's a long cycle and it's a huge stressful metabolism level, and they use it continuously, and there's no issue with that. No. As far it was prepared from the beginning, like Matthias said.
Great, thank you both for that input. Manuel, thank you for the question. We spoke briefly, I believe you mentioned acidifiers as we were getting into the specifics of drinking water application. So we have a question here about, what about applying other types of additives, either in drinking water or in the feed? Is there any sort of conflict or anything to be aware of when we're talking about adding acidifiers or probiotics as well?
I should say it's additive, it's synergistic, sometimes even. For some reason, sometimes we use combined acidifiers and phytogenics because they have a synergistic effect over gram-negative and gram-positive. For example, when there's Clostridia, sometimes coli can take a chance because there's a lot of cell destruction, cell loss, and E. coli for a moment can grow. It's not a pathogenic E. coli, but it's the number of coliform. If we analyze before and after the issue, they will grow. So acidifier and phytogenic would help. The acidifier to kill existing E. coli, especially if it's a permeabilizer complex, and the phytogenic because it helps to heal the normal gut structure by stimulating goblet cells. The mucin layer will represent a physical barrier and to protect the gut so the gut can heal faster. It's like one is healing and another is curing.
Totally agree. Thanks, Fernando.
Excellent, thank you for that. And that actually already tackles another question regarding gram-negative bacteria. So you've got two birds with one stone, as the expression goes. All right, let's see about this. We have a question here. Is there anything to keep in mind regarding, well, here we say coccidiosis vaccination in particular in a broiler breeder flock, but if we don't need to get that granular, just in general, are there any tips, any things to keep in mind when we're talking about application of essential oils in drinking water and vaccination schedules?
It's not specific to use phytogenic for coccidia vaccine. What we can say is that if they are applying cocci vaccine and they want to avoid any risk of, let's say, damaging the oocyst colonization, the phytogenic will help to reduce subclinical coccidiosis challenges. It's not directly linked, but again, it should be gut protection with essential oils that will help to reduce by the time any field or oocyst settlements. I think Matthias can give a comment on that as well.
Yeah, I agree, and we also suggest, if you use live attenuated vaccines and essential oils, maybe keep 1 day, in between to make sure the vaccination is working as well, and then phytogenics and essential oils, they can, show their full potential afterwards in protecting the gut.
Okay, great. So certainly something to keep in mind. Thank you for that advice.
So we have two situations to remind: gut integrity enhancement and gut protection. When I talk about Clostridia, it's mainly gut integrity, or for example, feed structure. When I talk about cocci, we talk about gut protection. Both arguments go through phytogenics.
Great. We're talking a lot about drinking water, but as I mentioned before, we've also discussed in a previous session the feed application, right? The in-feed use of digesterone products. What is there certain logic to when to go in the feed and when to go in the drinking water? What sort of things would you want to keep in mind when you're trying to make that decision? Is it all about efficacy, or is it the type of challenge? What can we say there?
Fernando, if you want to give your experience.
Okay. I was with the words in my teeth. Okay, if performance is your main concern, and anything that could disturb performance, like clostridiosis, like the feed structure, like feed intake, all of these concerns, then it should be in the feed. Why? Birds are young, like any human kid, and from the very early beginning, you got to stimulate and help the gut epithelial development. And as I remember what I said, the gut develops 600% from day 0 up to 6. So you got to take this chance by helping with the phytogen to promote as better as possible the gut epithelia and gut villi development. So it should be in the feed continuously. Of course, it will cover clostridiosis whenever it happens. For the phytogenic solution, it's more a field solution to use it wherever you need, whenever you need, from a veterinarian, from a technician, from an engineer. And because we have, for example, some specific outbreaks which are really planned or really expected on time, then you use the drinking water application.
Anything to add there, Matthias?
Really. So, but to keep it short, more preventional approach, I would say, in feed, and more interventional approach in water.
Yeah,
so this is to keep it short.
Although both are feasible, if I for some reason I had an issue with my layers and they are performing less for 1 or 2 weeks, I can use still the drinking water because I need immediate action with a high dosage. It's like doing an antibiotic medication in the feed, which takes longer, or in the water, which takes much short time. So I want an immediate effect, then drinking water. If it's a continuous effect to promote something, then you need the feed.
All right, crystal clear. Thank you both for that. Let us see what we can move on to. We have additional questions coming in, and we will again try to get to as many of these as we can. So I want to thank you for everyone who submitted them. If you don't hear your question in today's session, we will follow up. You'll hear from a Biomin representative with an answer to your question. What about, here we go. We've talked a lot about health and specific challenges, but here's one relating to environment, emissions, odor on the farm. Do you have any advice regarding ammonia reduction?
Yeah. Okay.
Would you go ahead from the field? Thanks.
Let's give an example. Instead of delivering more theoretical information, when there's a feed digestibility issue, animals tend to absorb less protein, less amino acids, less protein. So there's a more protein, which are undigestible protein, released to the environment. This will lead to more ammonia emissions, more protein loss, wet litter, bad quality, air quality, and so on. So by improving gut integrity, this time I'm talking about integrity, you keep enterocyte and villi structure much more efficient. With that, there'll be better protein absorption. So this is the physiology to understand what's going on. If you improve feed digestibility, especially for protein digestibility, keeping a good structure, you reduce emissions.
Great.
And we have a lot of trials. Matthias knows well about that. We have a lot of trials which proved gas emissions reduction. This is a hot topic in Central Europe, mainly those countries in the Baltic, in the Netherlands. It's a big issue, and so they are really going to this solution more often than many other countries.
Yeah, indeed. So this is a very hot topic in Europe. Also globally, it's an emerging topic. So And yeah, we could clearly see that digesterone has an impact on reduction on emissions. As you said, Fernando, I only can agree that it's mostly due to better utilization of the nutrients.
In this situation, I would say probably the phytogenic in the feed should be obviously more efficient, because you'll be using continuously from day zero and keep the same feed digestibility and gut structure for a long period. However, if it happens to be just an outbreak for some reason, you can use the soluble, but it's rather better to use it continuously if gas emissions is the issue.
Great, thank you for that. I want to turn to Matthias and talk to some of the material you shared earlier. You walked us through some of the science, some of the ingredients that go into a product like Pepsol, which we've seen, and you showed the scientific foundations for those benefits that we could later see in commercial flocks. You know, in some places, there's a lot of experience with traditional herbal medicines. Essential oils themselves are quite common or could be considered commodities. Why would you want to go with a product like Pepsol or Digesterone rather than just a simple essential oil that you apply yourself?
You're touching here a very critical point, Ryan. So I also mentioned it before already, but maybe now it's better to explain it in more detail. So yeah, there are lots of other products on the market using essential oils or phytogenics. But of course, to have a certain benefit and to have a consistent benefit, you need to have a high quality product, and you need a product with high quality standards. And at Biomine we have and we provide high quality standard products with a certain standard and quality standard requirements. And when these standard requirements are fulfilled, then you can basically expect consistent results in the field. So if there are for sure certain other products on the market without having certain quality requirements, quality control requirements. So then it's very hard to have consistent beneficial field results. So it's very crucial to have high quality products to have consistent results in the field, and that's what a customer is looking for, right?
So any thoughts to add there, Fernando?
Can I give an add?
Sure, please.
Just a single. These are natural products which have been used for more than 5,000 years on this planet. And we know exactly which amount of each ingredient have the advantages. So it's better to use small amounts of each product, avoiding side effects or disadvantages, and collect the maximum power of each. So it means I cannot use kilos of oregano, but I should use maybe some milligrams of oregano, some oreganos of another essential oil, and another, and combined, they will cover much better our targets. So we need more ingredients with less amount of each to be well balanced.
Yeah, thanks, Fernando. So additional to the quality aspect, of course, having the science behind the product and also the correct formulation is very important. I mentioned it already during my presentation. We have a formulation based on selected essential oils to have the best effect afterwards. You know? And this is, you know, the selection of these ingredients is based on scientific knowledge and in-house expertise. So this is very important.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that phytogenic production is the most sophisticated formulation in these days. It was empirical 5,000 years ago. Now that we understand and we research the properties of these ingredients, we have to do it properly. So I consider the most sophisticated formulations. Now, it's nothing that anyone is able to use. You need really good experts to promote good formulations with good combinations.
All right, and I think that's a great note to finish up our discussion on. If you're interested more in that, bringing that sophistication of these solutions to your operation, feel free to reach out to your Biomin representative or let us know just using the contact form that we provide after the session. Matthias, Fernando, thank you so much. A great discussion. Really appreciate your insights today.
Thank you so. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
You've been back twice, so maybe we'll see you both again a third time later this year. Who knows?
Who knows?
I also want to thank our audience. We had some really great questions, a lot of interest. Please continue to let us know your feedback. We're going to give you an opportunity now that as we bring our session to a conclusion, there will be a pop-up form that appears. It takes just 2 minutes for you to let us know if you enjoyed today's session, if there are other topics you'd like us to explore. This helps us to continue this webinar series and to make sure that you get value out of it. So we hope that you have enjoyed today's session. I want to thank you again for your attention. We know there's a lot of webinars, a lot of things you could be spending your time on, but we thank you for spending this hour with Biomin and Matthias and Fernando and learning more about phytogenics and how they can help your operation. So with that, I'm going to close. Thank you, and we'll see you again next time.
Thank you. Thank you everybody for participating.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Have a good day.